Ronnie, family, and Peter, good to see you. Hey, welcome aboard, everybody. Welcome to our little zero-G fantasy land, and it's great to have you guys in mission control. Yeah, we understand you're going to provide us some entertainment this evening. You know, NASA flight director made us close our windows today. We can't even look out the windows all night. So, yeah, that's right. They're guilty. So it's good to see you guys and have somebody to talk to on the planet Earth. How are you guys doing?
I'm personally thankful for my friends and family, especially my wife and children, and I'm looking forward to seeing them here soon.
And just to add a little bit to what Chell said, you know, being on the space station here and looking down at our incredibly beautiful planet gives us a different perspective on what it means to be, you know, citizens of planet Earth. And you know, since I've been up here, we've seen, you know, so many bad things that often happen down there. We follow that on the news, and it just makes me really thankful to live in a country like the United States that you know, provides us with freedom and opportunity. And you know, for me, being a middle-class kid from New Jersey, to just have the privilege to come up here and represent my country like this. So this is what I'm thankful for in this Thanksgiving.
Especially my wife and children, and I'm looking forward to seeing them here soon. Especially my wife and children, and I'm looking forward to seeing them here soon. Especially my wife and children, and I'm looking forward to seeing them here soon. Especially my wife and children, and I'm looking forward to seeing them here soon.
Hello, my name is Bailey. This question is for Chris. What was high school like for you?
Well, it was the 1980s, so the music was different, the hairstyle was different, the clothes we wore were different than today, but probably in 5 or 10 years it'll be the same. And in school, I was just like you, probably all of you there. I tried my best. I didn't always succeed, didn't always do well, but I put my best effort into school. Math and science were kind of my favorite subject. I didn't really like English in reading too much, but I've since grown out of that, and I enjoy reading now. And I played a lot of sports. And all of that happened in a little town called York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now.
Hello, my name is Steve Owen. I'm a teacher here at Riverside Prep. I'd like to ask you about the stress associated with the long periods in the space station. I'd like to ask Karen, what is the training that you get to cope with that stress and related psychological issues?
Well, for psychological issues, actually, when we are selected as astronauts, we go through quite a vigorous psychological screening process. You certainly don't want somebody who comes up here and has a breakdown or is claustrophobic. But also, we have, well, like Chris's background as a Navy SEAL and Luca's background as a test pilot clearly prepare them for high-stress situations. I could also argue that going through the process of getting a PhD can be a high-stress thing as well. And so, generally, when people get to the point where they're applying for this job, they've been through several things in their life that are high stress, and have proven that they can handle it and that they can get through it. And then also, once we start as an astronaut, for me, who did not have a flying background or have the military background, where maybe I was put under some of that stress in a very critical situation, we started flying T-38s. The jet aircraft that we fly in the astronaut office. And for me, that was very good training, because your life is on the line if you do something really silly or stupid in the airplane. And so you really learn to work under a stressful situation. And I think that's very important when you're living up here.
Hi, my name is
The future of space exploration, the emergence of private space sector and daily life in space. These are among the topics we discussed today with two special guests from International Space Station, Terry Wirtz, the current ISS commander, and Samantha Cristoforetti, the first Italian female astronaut in space. Hi Terry, buongiorno Samantha. Thank you very much for joining us on Euronews. I would like to start by asking how you feel about the other 3 crew members returning to Earth. As the next crew will arrive at the end of March, do you feel a bit lonely up there in space?
You know, it was sad seeing.
And what comes after the International Space Station once its mission is over? How do we ensure the presence of humans in space?
Well, that's a great question. The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to. And we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Orion is getting ready to launch. My name is Kelly Smith, and I work on navigation and guidance for Orion. Orion is NASA's next-generation spacecraft. Built with versatility in mind, it can take astronauts deeper into space than we've ever gone before, to an asteroid, or even onto Mars. For these missions, Orion has to be one tough spacecraft, withstanding high speeds, searing temperatures, and extreme radiation. Before we can send astronauts into space on Orion, we have to test all of its systems. And there's only one way to know if we got it right. No astronauts will be aboard. The spacecraft is loaded with sensors to record and measure all aspects of the flight in every detail. It all begins with launch, aboard a Delta IV as the spacecraft and the upper stage begin their first lap around Earth. Mission Control in Houston is monitoring the progress of the flight. Orion's over 100 miles up and going about 17,000 miles per hour. Just as it passes over the Indian Ocean, we lose communication. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. It's great to be a part of this first space flight for Orion, and we're looking forward to beginning a new chapter in human space exploration.
After uploading that short clip of supposed Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield talking about eventually going to the moon, I'm going to upload this longer version, only about a little bit over a minute long. This is all I have. I don't have a longer clip. Just a side note, you know how the so-called elite love a play on words when they call them astronauts, because they've never been in space. That's why they're called astronauts. This is how the elite love to mock all those that believe that somehow these phonies can get into space. What exactly do rockets push against in the vacuum of space? Rockets never been in space. Period. When you see a rocket launch, you always see it go at an angle towards the ocean. All it does is crash back into the ocean. You'll never see that full footage. That's why you see the Kennedy Space Center, for example, right next to the ocean. Exactly like you see in this image here, with this huge arch. Again, nothing more than a rocket that launches and comes back down to Earth. And there are plenty of images of this on Google Images. You can take a look for yourself. I'm not going to show them all here. And someone asked, what about the shuttle landings? I saw it on TV. Very easy to explain. It's just like watching a movie where pieces are edited together. When it's time for the supposed return of the space shuttle from outer space, all they do is have a so-called space shuttle, which is nothing more than an airplane, come in for a landing, as shown on TV. And I'll demonstrate that again for the new viewers. And just for reference, for anybody that hasn't seen my previous videos exposing the space shuttles being nothing more than airplanes, let's first take a look at these supposed space shuttles. Look at these wings. You think these wings will help this supposedly 80-ton space shuttle come in for a glide landing with no engines? This thing would fall out of the sky like a rock. No way this is a space shuttle. Now, to confirm what NASA even states, this is the text from their website, a glider is a special kind of aircraft that has no engine. The space shuttle flies as a glider during re-entry and landing. During ascent, that's of course the initial flight, thrust is provided by 3 space shuttle main engines at the base of the orbiter and the 2 solid rocket boosters that are joined to the orange external fuel tank. Of course, orange for 33. The solids are jettisoned about 2 minutes into ascent, and the fuel tank is jettisoned as the shuttle enters Earth's orbit. So there are no propellants available to the SSMEs during descent. So make that clear. There's no propellants. Though the engines are still present, the shuttle returns as an unpowered glider. Now, before showing the footage, like I stated, this is no space shuttle. This is an airplane, and here is your jet engines. Now let's take a look at this footage with the supposed landing of the space shuttle. Again, nothing but an airplane coming in for a landing at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm going to play this footage and break it down a bit. Then I'm going to play the footage again uninterrupted. I'll show again, this is nothing more than an airplane. I'm going to also mention here during the playing of the video, there's going to be a plane in the distance. And you're going to tell this is way too far to be the jet engines from that plane. It's clearly from the supposed space shuttle. Take a look and take a close listen. Now, first off, look at the elevation that you have here. It's coming in for the landing. No way a glider could be that low and maintain this level throughout if it's a glider. Now, here are the engines.
There's a shuttle.
One thing I want to point out, here is a supposed chase plane, which is in the very far distance. Let's take a look and listen at the rest of the landing of this airplane. And also, again, if you think it's this plane in the back, the supposed chaser plane, you are completely deceived, completely deluded, stuck on the lie, and you can't get out of it. Take a look and listen.
Touchdown. There's a shuttle. Touchdown.
Talking about frauds, getting back to Mark Kelly, the astronaut. Here he is with another fraud, Gabriella Giffords. So let's take a look at this image of Gabriella Giffords speaking about gun control. You can clearly see this is not the same woman. This is an actor, an actress taking her spot. Clearly see it's not the same person. Wearing orange, of course, 33 in Freemasonry. Just look at these two here. Two frauds married to each other. Match made in hell. And talking about frauds, let's listen to the rest of Chris Hadfield's interview on BBC where he goofs up. He talks about eventually going to the moon and beyond. It's a little bit over a minute long, almost 2 minutes actually. Take a listen at this fraud, just like Mark Kelly, just like Buzz Aldrin. All of these supposed astronauts are all Freemasons, all liars, deceiving the public. This is what Masonry is all about, deception. Take a listen.
How important is the engineering, the fact that we've learned to build such a large structure in Earth orbit?
It's sort of as if, you know, when a little kid is sailing their sailboat in a pond remotely, at some point that then person starts to sail a sailboat up and down the coast, and then they invent and learn and study and figure out all the things they need to do so that maybe then someday they can actually sail out of sight of land. And the station has been orbiting the Earth as if we're sort of sailing within sight of land as we invent. I mean, what do you make the hull out of? How do you navigate? What food do you need? How do you make a toilet that'll work forever? How do you recycle water? How do you recycle the oxygen? It's the main crucible test bed where we've been trying to grind out all the lessons that will eventually let us go to the moon. It's the main crucible test bed where we've been trying to grind out all the lessons that will eventually let us go to the moon, that will eventually let us go to the moon, and even that will eventually let us go to the moon and even further away. Where we've been trying to grind out all the lessons that will eventually let us go to the moon, main crucible test bed where we've been trying to grind out all the lessons that will eventually let us go to the moon and even eventually let us go to the moon. We've been trying to grind out all the lessons that will eventually let us go to the moon, and where we've been trying to grind out all the lessons that will eventually let us go to the moon, eventually let us go to the moon.
Astronauts to the moon. Astronauts to the moon. Astronauts to the moon. Astronauts to the moon.
Alright, today we're going to look at Neil Armstrong being interviewed by Sir Patrick Moore, aka Games Master. And we're going to pose the question to Mr. Armstrong, did you really go to the moon? But first, let's have a quick gander at the Gadgie's first question, shall we?
Mr. Armstrong, I do realise that when you were on the moon, you had very little time for gazing upwards. But could you tell us something about what the sky actually looks like from the moon? The sun, the earth, the stars, if any, and so on?
The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon. The Earth is the only visible object other than the sun that can be seen, although there have been some reports of seeing planets. I myself did not see planets from the surface, but I suspect they might be visible. The Earth is quite beautiful from space and from the moon. It looks quite small and quite remote, but it's very blue and covered with white lace and of the clouds, and the continents are clearly seen, although they have very little color from that distance.
Aye, and remember, Mr. Armstrong has got to have the right stuff to be able to go into outer space, and must have the physical and mental capabilities to win the Krypton factor twice over in one day. So when the Gaj's descriptive words and experience is no better than the Russian space dogs, I go investigate. Aye, here comes the science bit. Right, in order to find out if Mr. Armstrong is telling the truth, we're going to use two methods of experimentation. First method, we're going to measure his physical reaction to the questions, in this instance, the Gaj's eye movements. Take a look at this picture diagram. When a person is accessing real thoughts, sounds and emotions, that person will look to their left in an automatic response in retrieving that stored information. And so, when a person is looking to their right, that person is constructing or fabricating images and sounds, and at the same time trying to empathise with the lie, while constantly checking themselves for validity and continuity. They say the bigger the lie, the more the brain has to work to formulate the sequence. Therefore, this creates an automatic response in behaviour which can be measured. Method 2 is a psychology method called linguistic text analysis and has 4 key features. 1. Liars often reference themselves less when making deceptive statements. 2. Liars tend to involve others and disassociate themselves. 3. Liars explain things in the most simple terms. 4. Liars will often pad a lie with long, drawn-out patterns of speech. And finally, liars will often come prepared with an antidote or story to pad the lie. I'm going to call this the commode theory. Keep this in mind for later. And aye, just in case you were wondering, Mr. Armstrong is indeed right-handed, so we'll be continuing with our experiment. Cheers.
Mr. Armstrong, I do realize that when you were on the moon, you had very little time for gazing upwards. But could you tell us something about what the sky actually looks like from the moon, the sun, the earth, the stars, if any, and so on?
The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon. The Earth is the only visible object other than the sun that can be seen, although there have been some reports of seeing planets. I myself did not see planets from the surface, but I suspect they might be visible. The Earth is quite beautiful from space and from the moon. It looks quite small and quite remote, but it's very blue and covered with white lace and of the clouds, and the continents are clearly seen, although they have very little color from that distance.
What about the sun? Could you see any trace of the corona?
No, the glare from the sun on the helmet visor was too difficult to pick out the corona. The only time we could see the corona was during an eclipse of the sun from the moon, that is when we were flying through the moon's shadow and could observe the solar corona peeking out from behind the moon.
Looking at the photographs that you brought back, the colored photographs of the moon's surface, it seems that the color of the surface actually varies according to the angle from which you see it. Is this so? Does it do this?
Yes, it certainly does. It's a characteristic that we observe first while traveling around the moon in orbit. You could see that at the terminator, at the boundary between the black part of the moon and the lighted part of the moon, it was as if you were looking at a television set with the contrast turned to full contrast, very black and very white. As you moved further into the light, there were more and more shades of gray. But as you moved further, such the sun was higher above the horizon, you actually start to see the tans and browns appear, although at a very low level. Similarly, on the surface of the moon, the same characteristic is evident. You can see browns if the sun is high enough. Apollo 12, for example, landed while the sun was only 5 degrees above the horizon. So when they arrived, they saw no browns or tans anywhere, only fairly high contrast grays.
But you did?
But, yes, I did. The sun was at 11 degrees. And Apollo 12 did also. The next day, when they arose from their sleeping period and the sun was higher, of course, then the browns were observable to them.
When you were actually walking about on the moon's surface and kicking about a certain amount of dust, did you notice any local color? And also, were you at all subconsciously worried about the possibility of unsafe areas?
Well, the color is a puzzling phenomenon on the moon, aside from the characteristics that I've already mentioned. You generally have the impression of being on a desert-like surface with rather light-colored hues. Yet when you look at the material at close range, as if in your hand, you find it's a charcoal gray, in fact, and we were never able to find any things that were very different from that color. I suspect that as we get more and more samples with future flights, we will see that there is, in fact, some color, but the optical properties on the moon are most peculiar.
When you were actually walking about, did you have any difficulty in distance judging? Because I think I heard you say once that near-far things looked quite near.
Yes, we had some difficulties in perception of distance. For example, our television camera we judged to be from the cockpit of the lunar module only about 50 to 60 feet away, yet we knew that we had pulled it out to the full extension of a 100-foot cable.
Pause the video.
Yes, we had some difficulties in perception of distance. For example, our television camera we judged to be from the cockpit of the lunar module only about 50 to 60 feet away, yet we knew that we had pulled it out to the full extension of a 100-foot cable. Similarly, we had difficulty guessing how far the hills out on the horizon might be. The peculiar phenomena is the closeness of the horizon due to the greater curvature of the moon than we have here on Earth, of course 4 times greater, and the fact that it is an irregular surface with crater rims overlying other crater rims. You can't see the real horizon, you're seeing hills that are somewhat closer to you. There was a large crater which we overflew during our final approach, which had hills of the order of 100 feet in height, and we were only 1,100 feet west of that hill, and we couldn't see a 100-foot high hill from 1,100 to 1,200 feet away.
Did you notice any obvious difference between the far side and the near side as you went around it? I mean, apart from the obvious differences in topography?
No observable differences in color, but then the sun's angle was always somewhat different over there, so it would be difficult to make a general correlation. I would say the topography is the striking change. Of course, as all your viewers know, there are no seas on the far side of the moon, and it's all highlands and high mountains, big craters. So it's strikingly different from the.
There's just one more thing I'd like to ask you. You're one of the very, very few people, I think, whose opinion on this is really worth having. In fact, there are only 4 of you. Do you think, from your knowledge of the moon, having been there, that it is going to be possible in the foreseeable future to set up scientific bases there on anything like a large scale?
Oh, I'm quite certain that we'll have such bases in our lifetime. Somewhat like the Antarctic stations and similar scientific outposts, continually manned. Although certainly there's the problem of the environment, the vacuum, and the high and low temperatures of day and night. Still in all, in many ways, it's more hospitable than Antarctica might be. There are no storms, no snow, no high winds, no unpredictable weather phenomena that we're yet aware of, and the gravity is a very pleasant kind of place to work in, better than here on Earth, and I think it would be quite a pleasant place to do scientific work, and quite practical.
Mr. Armstrong, thank you very much, and again, let me say what a tremendous honor and privilege it's been to have you with us.
Cheers. Here comes the science bit. Right, Mr. Armstrong failed on every aspect of his eye exam, and it's worth noting that not even once did I record Mr. Armstrong retrieving real stalled information, and secondly, showed classic linguistic responses associated if someone was lying, which draws me to the conclusion that Mr. Armstrong didn't go to the moon and, believe it or not, lied. This video may not come as a surprise to some folk, but entertaining the idea that we are being lied to doesn't compute with most people, and it would be at this point I'd encourage you to go research on this topic. Just type in NASA deception, or check out a gadget called Bart Sibrel and his videos, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon and Astronauts Gone Wild. We only just touched upon this, and I'll definitely do more videos on NASA in the future, right? And remember to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comment section. Cheers!
Alright, so like I said, we're still working on the sound here, and I have no positive confirmation that we have the sound. So that's the kind of thing that can happen if you're trying to do things that are a bit more complicated than your usual job. So we'll just continue working on it and let the colleagues work on that.
What does he mean, working on the sound? It either works or it doesn't. You can't really work on it. And if you did work on it, it would probably be ready in a few hours or a day, not in a few minutes. This is all just done for effect.
I'm ready for the event.
So he's ready for the event. I thought they were fixing the audio. So really we're just waiting for Tim to be ready. It doesn't seem like that piece of audio should have really come through.
We're all getting lots of questions for you on social media, and a couple here are, how easily does water boil in space, and does the tea taste different up there?
I've cut a few of these questions out because they're just nonsense. And this is just proof of that.
Well, the second part of your question is the far most important, so I'll answer that first. The tea actually tastes surprisingly good. I was really delighted. I have my tea, and my method of using a kind of teapot and decanting it from one pouch to another is working really well. So yes, I'm enjoying my tea up here.
So they've added the really long delays for effect. Now, for me, this is a green screen job. Where there's cables under his t-shirt, cables around his belt. I don't think he's actually there in that room. I think that's just a JPEG behind him. We've shown on Flat Earth Rebel Outpost how easy that is to do. I mean, on a space station, you wouldn't have a sort of spare room full of junk like that. There's also too many lights. These high wattage fluorescent bulbs, you wouldn't be using high wattage lighting on something that ran on solar panels. You just wouldn't do that. This actually looks like the backdrop is someone's garage. I've taken a photo of it, and they've got this Tim Peake Masonic actor just on some harnesses and cables.
Hi Tim, Tom Cheshire from Sky News again. You're looking fairly comfortable in zero gravity. Just wondering whether you had mastered the zero gravity somersault, and if so, whether you'd give us a twirl.
This is the reason I made this little video. Just watch this.
I definitely haven't mastered it. I'll give you a trial and I'll show you just how bad it is.
That was great.
Practice makes perfect. Give me another week.
Let's see that again, slow motion. Zero gravity, they're trying to say? That is not zero gravity. This one's slowed down even more.
Hi Tim, it's Rob Oliver from BFBS and Forces TV again.
Armed Forces TV. Oh my God, how much programming are they going to put into this little clip?
Eating Christmas pudding in strange places, is there any other way that this compares to a military tour of duty?
Hi Tim, Tom Cheshire from Sky News. Sleeping presents its difficulties. Astronauts get woken up by cosmic rays on their retina. Have you been bedding in that respect?
I think I've been fairly fortunate. I'm enjoying sleeping. I haven't actually tied my sleeping bag down at all. I actually quite enjoy just floating around the crew quarter. You're not going to go anywhere. It's very small, so you might occasionally bounce off a wall, but it's a very gentle nudge.
Every time he turned over in his sleep or moved a little bit, as we all do, he would start moving around in 0G. He'd start banging off the walls. It would wake him up. This is complete nonsense. It's a complete lie.
Tim, it's Alok Jha from ITV News again. You told me when we met in Star City a few weeks ago that you wanted to see the new Star Wars movie. Have you seen it yet? Or if you're not, when will you?
No, we haven't seen it yet. We're very excited about the Star Wars movie. I think we're all fans up here, and I believe that on the 21st we may get to see that up here on the space station. So a little bit later than everybody else, but hey, what a spectacular place to watch Star Wars.